Well, a very warm welcome to Donington Park, everybody. We've got the first of two races coming up for you for the Burney's V8s and Historic Outlaws. Now, this first race is for Burney's V8s. The Historic Outlaws will be out later on today here in what is blistering conditions. Not quite as warm as Thursday or Friday here at Donington Park, but with these big V8 monsters heading out onto the circuit, it's still going to be warm behind the wheel, what with the sun glaring through the windscreen and all of that heat soak from the engine and the transmissions and the brakes. So it's hovering around. Air temperature 28 degrees at the moment. That means the track temperature is probably going to be 10 degrees hotter than that, and the car temperatures for those with closed cockpits is going to be a lot warmer than that. The cars are making their way out onto the grid in the advance of this 20-minute race that we will see, and it will be set, the grid, based on their qualifying times that were set earlier on this morning, for which, as you can imagine, with such a colossal grid of cars having taken onto the circuit for qualifying, there were 36 cars took to the circuit for qualifying, one of whom I gather has withdrawn because of mechanical woes. So the cars come out of the assembly area straight onto their formation lap, which means we should be able to guide you very shortly through the grid for this one. What a fine sight they make, don't they, with the TVR Tuscans and the Talbot and Sunbeam Lotus. We've got the MGB V8 GTs in there, and then of course the big American muscle cars as well. So it really is an eclectic mix of cars, and you can see they stream their way along what is a beautifully manicured and groomed Donington Park circuit. Let's have a look at the grid then. Michael Saunders qualified on pole position 1.9 seconds quicker than anybody else, and alongside is Martin Evans, who will do this race. Row 2 of the grid is Aston Blake, who will be behind the wheel, and alongside is Chris Richardson. When we get to the next row of the grid, that's row number 3. It's going to be Peter Ankers, and he's got Bernard Foley for company. Then it's Neil Fowler and the car that Russ McCarthy shares with Steve Cripps. That's one car on the grid I don't have the starting driver for. Next up, row number 5, Guy Carter, and he's got Simeon Chodosh for company, followed by Aaron Moyes and Rob Holliman, who sit there on row number 6. Row number 7, on the inside of that 7th row of the grid, it's Gary Lapidis, and he's got Guy Samuels for, in fact, Peter Samuels will start that car, I should say. Peter Samuels will start that actual car. And then moving up from his position, where he qualified 16th, but because of Alex Taylor withdrawing, it's Stephen Wiggins and Bruce Carter that line up on row number 8. Then we head on to row number 9, and that's where we see Chris Ridge and Luke Wass, followed by Matt Snowball and Clayton Sampson, who line up on that 10th row of the grid. The rows still continue. Row 11 of the grid is Phil Walker, and he's got Andy Wilson in the DAF Super Saloon for company. And next up on row number 12, it's a number 6 car, which will be started by Chad Donner in this race alongside Oliver Wardle. Then it is going to be the car of Birch and Holden that is next up. Again, don't have a start driver for that one, and alongside is going to be Sam Leatherby. Then it's going to be Mitten Yelmaz, who has Jimmy Hibbert for company. Simon Hardington should be next up on the next row of the grid, followed by Keith Wyman, and then it's Robin Woodger, who is going to be at the very tail end of this, what we're expecting to be a 35-car grid now, with the sole exception being Alex Taylor, who we say had qualified 15th, but had a rather nasty-sounding TVR Tuscan in qualifying, so it didn't sound right. Came into the pit lane, he thought it was just firing on 7 cylinders and they might be able to sort it, but he has subsequently withdrawn. So Michael Saunders is the yellow TVR with the lighter green flashes to it. So he was 1.9 seconds quicker than Martin Ellis could muster in qualifying. Michael Saunders qualified in a 1 minute 41.163. It was a 1:43.064 for the car alongside, and Michael Saunders did less laps in qualifying. He only did 7 laps, whereas others did nearly twice the amount of that. His average speed, nearly 88.5 miles per hour. That's the average speed around the circuit. So Michael Saunders really hooked up that TVR in qualifying. Good to see so many Tuscans on the grid. Harks back to the one-make series that we had in the UK, which was probably one of the best ever one-make series that we had in the UK. But just look at the variety that we've got on those front rows of the grid. Yes, TVRs all on that left-hand side of the grid there. As we will look at it from the start line, it'll be the right-hand side as far as the drivers are concerned. But then you've got Talbot Sunbeam Lotus, Chevrolet Monte Carlo, MGB GT V8s, and then as we head further down the grid, that's when we start to see the Corvettes and the Camaros, the Plymouth Barracuda, the Ford Mustang. We've even got an AMC Javelin out amongst them, and Paul Eaton, who is 28th on the grid, I think moves up to 27th with that withdrawal. A brand new Reliant Scimitar that he's built, that is making his debut in that car this weekend. having campaigned very quickly in a Holden Commodore over the years. So safety car peels its way into the pit lane. Michael Saunders and Martin Ellis are on the front row of the grid, with Aston Blake and Chris Richardson on row number 2. 20 minutes are on the clock, red lights are on the gantry, the lights go out, and it's not a bad start from Michael Saunders from pole position. He's got the inside line as they head up towards Redgate for the first time. What's going to happen further back? Looks like Chris Richardson has got the jump on Martin Ellis, and also sneaking through is Aston Blake, but everybody just making sure they give each other enough room, heading round through Redgate corner the first time. Gary Lapidus with problems in the early stages, his car looking as though that was some sort of mechanical issue for him, so he hops the car into the gravel trap and he's going to try and, I think, park it out of harm's way, but he's not fully out of harm's way there. So that will be for sure localised yellow flags, but everybody else safely through the first corner and started to charge their way either through the Crane of Curves, or in the case of the front runners, already up towards what will be McLean's corner. So it's the TVR that leads the way. Martin Ellis looks as though he's lost another place there, because the red MGB GT V8 of Neil Fowler has managed to wiggle its way through. And there's Rob Hollyman fighting away with the number 13 car that Russ McCarthy shares with Steve Cripps, side by side up towards the braking area for Coppice. Rob Hollyman just about, I think, manages to squeeze his way through there at the wheel of the Camaro, qualified 12th, and is now fighting away with the car that qualified in 8th position, so he's made a bit of progress in the early stages. They accelerate their way in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. Be careful that you don't run wide on the exit of the corner, otherwise you will pick up a time penalty because of the sensors that are there, and then from there it's the short charge down into the downhill braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. By the look of things, Bernard Foley trying to attack, and gains 2 places there, wiggles his way through past Guy Carter, and also has gone past Martin Ellis as well by the look of things. So 2 places gained for Bernard, and now he's going to have a little nibble at the car that lies ahead of him, which I think is Simeon Chadosh. So Martin Ellis has dropped his way down through the order now. Bearing in mind he started on the front row of the grid, I think the time was probably set by his son, which was Matt Ellis. He's under pressure from Rob Hollyman, who's looking one way and looking the other as they come up towards the braking area for Redgate corner. Martin Ellis has the inside line, will hang on to it. There's a lick of flame from Rob Hollyman's Camaro as the unburnt fuel ignites as it comes out of the exhaust, and they charge their way, the thunderous noise of these cars as they work their way down through the Crane of Curves. Martin Ellis having dispensed through the twiddly parts of the Crane of Curves with Rob Hollyman. A far more nimble Lotus Sunbeam is now back up onto the coattails of Bernard Foley, who lies ahead, but you can bet your bottom dollar once the straights open up that that's not going to be the case again, because the power of the big American car will haul himself back towards the coattails of the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus, and that's absolutely what's happening by the look of things. Just off the back of those is the gold-coloured 999 car. That's Luke Wass at the wheel of one of the Chodosh family Corvettes. Luke, who's been a regular racing things like Corvettes and Scimitars over the years. See, he's working hard to see whether he can try and prise the door open a little bit, but in a straight line you'd have thought the slightly newer Camaro might just have the legs on the older Corvette. Into the braking area, these warm conditions, it's a case of managing the car, and particularly the tyres and the brakes as well, because you're asking a lot of all of these. I think the number 13 car, looking at the colour of the helmet, I'm going to hazard a guess that's Russ McCarthy that started behind the wheel of that car, and Steve Cripps will do race 2 tomorrow, so I think I'm going to stick with that for the rest of the race. And he's involved in a good battle at the moment. He's got Peter Samuels right behind him, then the orange TVR that is just behind that, and that will be looking to try and work its way through the order. That'll be Steve Compton, I think, or is it Dan Birch and the Wilson car possibly? It might be the 155 actually. So through they come over the start-finish line. Rob Hollyman looking to attack Bernard Foley. He's looking as though he might have the inside line, but he's just a bit too far back when they get in towards the braking area, so there is going to be no improvement there. Here comes the Plymouth Barracuda as well. Matt Snowball's number 48 car looking absolutely fantastic. He's trying to hunt down the 54 that lies just ahead of him, the TVR Tuscan. 2 of them aren't quite close enough, so Chris Ridge for the moment could just hang on to the place as he starts to charge his way down through the Crane of Curves. But Matt Snowball's car looks absolutely fantastic. It can't be the easiest thing to propel around the Donington Park circuit. He sits there in what will be 19th place at the moment. Chris Ridge in the light green and black Tuscan ahead in 18th place. But the Barracuda, not only does the livery on it look great, the noise track of that car when it sails its way past you is absolutely fantastic. Everywhere you look amongst the field, when you've got 35 cars out there, there is always somebody to fight with. You might not be right up onto terms with them, but you can certainly chase them and try and get close. So towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. as though Bernard Foley's still under attack from Martin Ellis. Luke Wass still under attack from the car that sits behind him as well, which is Aaron Moyse, the number 57 car, which I think is a period livery, looking back on the livery of that car. Rob Holliman going to gain a place here. He manages to nip up the inside of Neil Fowler's number 91 MGB GT V8. And then also, I think, taking the opportunity to try and squeeze his way through. He's going to be the TVR Tuscan that sits behind, but didn't quite make it. So just the one place lost there for Neil Fowler. Out of Goddard. Off camber on the exit, so you've got to be careful with the power of these cars, because otherwise the tail end of the car will very quickly remind you that that off camber exit means you've just got to be patient on the throttle. In the background of the shot, Martin Ellis still under pressure as well and might lose a further place here. He has now dropped his way down through the order to something like 11th position. He's now under attack from Aaron Moyse, and also the Birch & Wilson number 155 TVR Tuscan. So fight going on at the moment. This is for 5th and 6th position. Simeon Chodosh under attack from Rob Holliman, who we've seen racing Porsches for a good number of years. Still got the collection of Porsches, but this Camaro is what's serving as his race car for this weekend, and he's trying to hunt down the vet that lies ahead. And there we've lost one, I'm afraid. That's number 42. That's Ian Jones who is out. His Cerberus with steam or smoke from underneath the bonnet. That looks as though that is the inside of Redgate Corner, where he's pulled the car sensibly well and truly out of harm's way behind the wall. So not even the requirement for localised yellows there. Good driving. Out of Coppice Corner, down the straight in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. This good fight still going on for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th places. They've all pretty much got themselves together. Work your way onto the Melbourne Loop. Over the start-finish line comes our race leader. Haven't seen a lot of him at the moment, but Michael Saunders leading by 3.1 seconds from in second place Chris Richardson, who qualified 4th quickest Chris Richardson at the wheel of the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, the ex-AS car by the look of things. And there's another car off, that's Luke Wass. Luke Wass has had problems as well. He was going well in the early stages, but I'm afraid that's retirement for Luke. And again, good driving from him, realised where the gap was in the wall, pulled the car out of the way. Here's our second place car, thundering its way out of the old hairpin and starting to climb up towards McLean's Corner, where we're now starting to see some back markers come in. So Simon Hardington's Ford Mustang has already been dealt with by our race leader Michael Saunders. Next car to meet that will be Chris Richardson, who of course is going to want to try and place a lap on that Mustang and not lose time in the process, and I think he's going to meet it just as they exit Coppice Corner. So this is good news for the car in second place. Should be able to squeeze his way past the Aston Martin. And then I think it'll be Jimmy Hibbert at the wheel of the glorious looking Ford Thunderbolt that's next up. So in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. He's going to catch that Ford just on the exit. Squeeze the throttle, shift up through the gearbox, throws himself alongside and should be through by the time they head down in towards the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. So that's another back marker dealt with by Chris Richardson. But the 3.1 second margin looks to have increased on this particular lap, so I think Michael Saunders probably either met the traffic in the better place or dealt with the traffic better, as the case may be, because the lead margin I think is extended maybe even by a second at least, if not 2, on this lap. So here comes Michael Saunders over the start-finish line. Wait for the arrival of Chris Richardson. What's the gap? It was 3.1, it becomes 5.5, so it really has come out between the pair of them. In third place is going to be Aston Blake. You see the lights on his TVR Tuscan as he's about to come up to Simon Hardington's Ford Mustang. Simon sees him coming. Aston moves over to the right-hand side of the circuit, a check in the mirror that he can move back across the racing line and accelerate his way out of the corner. He drives in this race. His father, Tony, will drive in the race tomorrow. Again, they charge their way downhill through the Craner curves. Must be so exhilarating, one of these TVR Tuscans. The original engine in these cars was the Rover V8, then TVR produced their own engine, the AJ P8 engine, which powered the cars in the later years of the TVR Tuscan Challenge. Aston has now dealt with the Ford Thunderbolts, that Jimmy Hibbard now dealt with, so this is the third place car at the moment. Fourth is going to be Peter Ankers at the wheel of his TVR Tuscan, and there's Paul Eaton, the car that makes his race debut this weekend. I'm afraid looks though Paul might have a problem. I saw the car was smoking very slightly in qualifying. Spoke to Paul this morning, he's looking forward to this one. His daughter Abby will be racing the Holden Commodore in the historic Outlaws race later on, but also first race for this newly built Reliant scimitar from Paul. He's going to, I'm afraid, clock up a retirement for him. So the third place car through the S's. Further down through the order, Rob Holliman has got his hands full. He's been picked off there by Guy Carter by the look of things. So Guy Carter was a couple of places behind him at the start of the lap, but he's got through now, but in a straight line. The Camaro powers its way back alongside. Is Rob Holliman going to hang on to the place? Yes, because he moves over to protect the place he's just gained. So Rob Holliman losing one place, grabbing it back instantly. So this is a brilliant fight still going on. And just ahead of Rob Holliman is going to be that red MGB GT V8, which is going to be Neil Fowler. Neil Fowler has got his hands full of the car that lies just ahead of that, which is going to be, I think, still Simeon Chodosh, as they go past the ailing scimitar of Paul Eaton, who's doing a very good job of staying out of harm's way, raising his hand to forewarn the drivers. Paul with plenty of racing experience, including racing on-circuit go-karts for a good number of years in what I think was the 250 National category. Now there is another problem. That's Chad Donner, I think that may well be. And that is looking as though that's coming from the right-hand wheel of that car. That would be brake issues with his car. Fight for 9th and 10th going on as well. Just down through the Craner curves. The two Tuscans have got themselves together. And Aaron Moyse now ahead of Guy Carter by the look of things. So we're past the halfway point of this race. Remember, a 20-minute race. Just over 8.5 minutes to go. Back markers to deal with as well. So Aaron Moyse deals with the traffic, which is Simon Hardington, again staying out of harm's way. As soon as they get past that traffic, there's more traffic to deal with. Jimmy Hibbert's Ford Thunderbolt is the next of those. But Simeon Chodosh is going to want to weave his way through and past. And then just after that, Neil Fowler is still trying to ensure that he can get by and not get unpicked by Rob Holliman. So up towards Coppice they'll go. In fact, Rob Holliman has just been unpicked by Bernard Foley, who's gone through at the wheel of the silver and the burgundy machine. So this is a brilliant fight. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and I would say probably even 12th position are all pretty much on the straight at the same time, which is good to see with 12 minutes of the race already having elapsed, just how close they all are to each other, weaving their way through the Fogarty S's. And we've got an off this time, I'm afraid, and that's Stephen Wiggins who's off. So that's the car that he shared on other occasions with Steve Hyde. Steve, who raced these cars actually in period, the TVR Tuscans, so that will be localised yellow flags there whilst the marshals deal with that. Now, the loser on this lap, oh, we've got another one, and that's gone backwards into the pit wall, I'm afraid to say. Now, that particular car, not the easiest one to pick out, but I will try and identify it if I can. And as I look through, could be Keith Wyman's car, possibly. Looks like it might be a 7 on the side, so I think Keith Wyman's car has backed it into the pit wall and caused a bit of a chunk of damage, I'm afraid, to the tail end of the number 17 car. And another one that's just disappearing off, that's Bruce Carter's by the look of the colour of it. Yep, 575, that's Bruce Carter. That may well have been a spin coming out of the Melbourne hairpin, probably lit up the tyres a little bit too much. Now, the big gainer on that previous lap was Bernard Foley, as the red flags, I think, may possibly be bringing this race to a halt. Yes, red flags are out, I'm afraid. So I just saw cars slowing up and marshals raising, thought, or reaching for the red flags, but I think with that car stricken against the pit wall, and you can see the damage to the tail end of the car. Such a sorry sight to see what is Keith Wyman's car. I had correctly identified it, the Ford Mustang Fastback, having been backed into the pit wall, and with the marshals not really able to get out to assist with moving the car, and probably damage with bodywork rubbing on tyres, there's nothing they can do to shove it out of harm's way, and it would put the marshals in a dangerous position. Little choice for race control, but I'm afraid to throw the red flag for this one with what were at the time 6 minutes and 27 seconds remaining. So we're not quite at 75% distance, and usually when you get to 75% distance you can call it a result. As we are not quite there, it may well be there could be some sort of restart for this race over a small number of laps or a reduced time period, but we'll have to wait for race control to confirm all of that. So all of the cars for the moment, we'll wait and see where they go. Let's just see if we can have a quick look back at exactly what happened to Keith Wyman as he came out of Goddard's corner. Comes out of Goddard's, I'd imagine probably just on the throttle a little bit too much. He gets on the throttle, the tail end gets away from him, it starts to snake on him, and then as he tries to recover it, he makes contact with the front of the car into the pit wall, and then the rear end of the car into the pit wall, and that was right across the front of the Ford Maverick of Metin Yalmaz by the look of things. And the other car that's off as well, of course, is the number 99 TVR Tuscan, which is Stephen Wiggins, and his car looks as though it may well be up at potentially Coppice corner. So the driver out of the car, that's the good thing. Keith Wyman, you can see him walking away from his damaged Ford Mustang, and originally I was fearful it was just the rear end of the car that had suffered the damage, but I'm afraid that front right-hand corner of the car also took a clonk into the pit wall, so that's going to be, I'm afraid, disappointment for Keith this weekend, with retirement from the race and of course a chunk of repairs to do. Unlikely to see that car back out for the rest of the weekend, and of course get it back to the workshop and work on it. But that was an immaculately prepared car at the start of the weekend, and it's such a disappointment to see that car so badly damaged. Most important thing though is that the driver's okay. So red flags are out. Our spectators here at Donington Park still enjoying the sunshine and seeking the shelter. Say it's certainly a lot cooler than it was yesterday, but for the testing that was taking place at this circuit both on Thursday and on Friday, it was insanely warm. Even last night at around about 6 o'clock at night, it was still 31 degrees, and at that point it had cooled off a degree or two, but it was very warm. And I think Thursday, when we had more testing here, it was hovering around 35 degrees, and that's just air temperature. Track temperature, you can add usually about 8 to 10 degrees to that for the track temperature, and then inside the cars, chatting to a couple of the drivers, you're looking at 60 to 70 degrees inside the cars, so it is absolutely unbearable. And for some of the support races here, they'll have aircon in the cars, but certainly for all of these cars out there, if you were going to be in one this weekend, you'd probably choose the TVR Tuscan, because at least it's not got a roof and you can maybe just lift a little bit on your visor just to get some sort of airflow through. So all the cars for the moment being held at pit entry, which for me is a good sign, because that means that if it were the end of the race, they would probably be ushered into the pit lane. For the moment, they're being held where they are to allow the marshals, our fantastic Donington Park marshals, to assist with the recovery truck. Mick Avery, who's been a long time recovery truck supporter here at Donington Park, just about to, I would imagine, lift that car onto the flatbed, so there'll be a high-ab needed, hydraulic crane to lift that car onto the flatbed and recover it out of harm's way. The pit wall has done its job of standing up. There'll be no circuit furniture that will need dealing with. So once the car is clear and any sweeping up is needing to be done, if it's brought any grass out onto the circuit or any oil or coolant has come down and dropped onto the tarmac area, I think it probably all has dropped onto the grass, if I'm honest, but maybe a little bit of sweeping up just needing to be done, then we can hopefully get some sort of restart underway, if there is one at this stage, because there's still no confirmation as to what is going on. So we're all waiting patiently. The crowd are waiting patiently. You can see in the background, just to the left of the grandstand there is a breeze here at Donington Park, so it's a cooling breeze. It's like yesterday where it was so still, there wasn't too much of a breeze. It got up a bit later on in the day, the wind, but it's a bit breezy today, which means that, yeah, air temperature is cooler generally, and with a bit of a breeze, it's slightly more comfortable today. So safety car is waiting at the front of the grid as well, which again to me suggests we are going to get some sort of restart, because there's no reason why the safety car would move to the front of the grid if there weren't going to be a restart. And add that to the fact that the cars are being held rather than dropped into the pit lane, I think the two combined, and this is just me, this is purely me trying to understand what might be happening, I think we will get some sort of restart. Now there was 6 minutes and 27 seconds on the clock when the red flag came out, so it's not going to be a long restart, probably something like 4-5 minutes I would have thought. And the positive thing also is that we were running slightly ahead of the scheduled timetable, so there is a bit of leeway because we did start this race earlier than was originally timetabled. So there's Stephen Wiggins' car being dragged through the gravel trap. Looks as though he did make very light contact with the tyre wall. You can just see some light damage to the front left corner of the fiberglass bodywork on his car. Whereas there's substantively more damage, of course, to poor old Keith Wyman's car, which is being, I think, winched onto the back of the flatbed recovery unit. A few of the other cars that retired just making their way around as well. You just see in the background of the shot there, Luke Wass is just driving his car back round. We saw him retired on what I think was the exit of Starkey's Bridge, just on the run up towards Schwantz Curve. I think that was the gap that he parked that car up in. And it may well be just something like maybe oil temperature or water temperature maybe just climbing a bit too high in that car, so that's why Luke parked it out on circuit, and now that it's had time to cool down a bit and we've got the red flag, he's able to drive that car back round. But I think we'll see that gold number 999 car heading in towards a pit lane, possible retirement, whilst everybody else is waiting to line back up on the grid. And yes, they're now being called forward. So Aston Blake is just being called forward to his grid position. And whether we will get another graphic for the grid, I'm not entirely sure. If not, we'll have to do the grid by naked eye and try and work out where they'll be. In theory, it will be the positions that they were running on the lap before the red flag. So it should be Michael Saunders and Chris Richardson that would line up on the front row of the grid, but we'll wait for them to take their positions and then we can work it back from there. Yeah, the number 57 of Aaron Moyes, I'm sure that is a period livery on that car. The TVR Tuscan, I'm sure I remember when I was watching TVR Tuscan racing in the 1980s and 1990s, I'm sure I remember the Visco livery on the car at the time. But I'm sure there'll be other people out there who will correct me on that. That Snowball's glorious looking Plymouth Barracuda, which, you know, you think a TVR Tuscan isn't small and MGB V8 isn't small, but just look at the size difference between them. The Plymouth Barracuda looks absolutely colossal by comparison. So Keith Wyman's Mustang on the back of the flatbed. Doesn't look as though at the moment there's any coolant or oil that's been spread on the circuit. As though anything that will have dropped will have been on the grass. So I think once we've got the car on the flatbed and then of course it's strapped down, then we should be good to go. You can see them ushering the cars forward. They'll only bring them into their correct grid positions once the recovery truck is out of harm's way. And that shouldn't be too far away. Still no indication as to what the length of time though for this restart will be. But as soon as we get that, we'll let you know. The marshals, by the look of things, and their piece of paper in their hand, they've got the grid and the way that things need lining up, so at least they've got the notes as to which positions to put them all into. We'll get now a view of Keith Wyman's damage, or a lot more damage to the front. Yeah, that poor old Ford Mustang has taken a heavy beating into the pit wall. You can see the whole right hand side of that car is very damaged indeed for what was a beautiful car at the beginning of this race weekend. I feel so sorry for Keith, because that is going to be a few hours in the workshop and of course a few pounds along the way as well, but I'm sure he'll be back out shortly. Right, so they're ushering the cars forwards now that the breakdown recovery unit is out of harm's way. Let's bring them forward. The restart of the race has been confirmed. You'd have thought I'd done this before, wouldn't you? It is a 5-minute restart. I thought it would be a 5-minute restart with 6:27 remaining on the clock when the red flags came out. You lose that minute and 27 because, of course, it's taking time to get things back underway again, so you'd always lose a little bit of time. So it is Michael Smith and Chris Richardson on the front row of the grid. Row 2 of the grid is going to be Aston Blake, and that looks like Peter Anker's car on row 2 of the grid. Row 3 of the grid looks as though that is Rob Holliman possibly that's there on the 3rd row of the grid. And then alongside, you can see a red roof, I can only assume it's Neil Fowler. And then the next row of the grid, I'm going to hazard a guess, Guy Carter, looking at the blue, dark blue TVR Tuscan, which would match his colours. And again, I can't quite see the car alongside, so we'll have to wait and see. Marshall's taking the opportunity to grab a little bit of shade. No such shade for our spectators out there at what for me is the best spectating spot at Donington Park, at the top of Craner Curves, all the way down through the Craner Curves. You get a brilliant view down through the old hairpin up towards McLean's and up towards McLaren. So we'll wait and see. We'll have a quick look, see if we can pick up any more cars on the grid as well, because of course Simeon Chodosh will be somewhere up there. Just can't see from there. It's so difficult to see from that camera angle. I think it might be Simeon Chodosh on the 3rd row of the grid. Right, so Michael Saunders, Chris Richardson, Aston Blake. Right, I think we've actually got a graphic as well that we can bring you. So we'll get the cars off on the formation lap once they're all fully lined up, and then we can bring you back through the grids, because I do believe now, thank you very much to a producer in my ear, we have confirmed we have got a graphic that can tell us the way that they're going to line up for this restart, so that is good news. I say cars that had retired out on circuit, certainly one of them I saw driven back and did go into the pit lane as I thought it would do, which was the Chevrolet Corvette of Luke Wass, the number 999 car. I think the TVR Tuscan that retired out at Coppice, Stephen Wiggins, has probably been dragged into a gap in the wall there, so I think he'll remain there for this restart. He'll be recovered at the end of the race. Never did quite pick up on what happened to Chad Donner's AMC Javelin that had that smoke coming from the right front wheel, as to whether he retired the car or not. We'll have to wait and see, but I can't see him there on the cars that are lining up on the grid, so he might be another one, I'm afraid, that has fallen by the wayside. Martin Ellis just being pushed into position at the wheel of his front row starting Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. And then our marshals doing a grand job, because of course, you know, they're trying to, when the cars first come out of the assembly area, if it's a standing start, they all sort of come out of the assembly area in the correct order. Because we are so long into the race and you've got back markers mixed up with front runners, when the race stops and they all stop on the start finish line and line up, they're all in a jumbled order. So the marshals have then got to work them all into position. So that's why at the moment Martin Reynolds is at 45 degrees, because he was having to weave through other cars to get there. But it's a rolling start, so once they all get going, they'll be in the correct order, and yes, they'll all be fully lined up. So I think we've got a slightly diminished grid, which doesn't surprise me. A, because of the incident that we saw, but B, also, you know, these cars in these conditions, you are asking a lot of the cars in these conditions, and I mean that's the engine, the gearbox, the brakes, the tyres, and of course the drivers in these conditions. So the engines are being asked to be fired up, the lights are on the safety car, and we're going to get a 5-minute restart underway. We've got another formation lap first though, so there'll be another rolling lap, just to make sure that everything is as it needs to be, which means as they head off on their formation lap again, Michael Saunders once more will be leading them round, but this time, rather than having the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus alongside him on the front row of the grid, it's going to be the Chevrolet Monte Carlo in the hands of Chris Richardson that will look to see what he can do. You can see there's a little air vent on the side of the car there. Let's at least giving Chris a little bit of airflow when he's out there. Michael Saunders starts from pole position. Chris Richardson is alongside. Aston Blake and Peter Ankers line up there on row number 2. We get towards the third row of the grid, and it's Simeon Chodosh and the car of Neil Fowler. Then it's Rob Holliman and Bernard Foley that are there on row number 4. Row 5 sees the 761 car of Guy Carter lining up alongside Aaron Moyse, and then it's Martin Ellis and the number 555 car, which sadly I don't have a starting driver for the Dan Birch and Wilson car. Dan Birch and Holden car, I should say. The next row of the grid is row number 7. That is going to be Bruce Carter, and 87, which I was led to believe was going to be Peter Samuels, but it says G Samuels on the graphic. And then next up is 54. That's Chris Ridge, and he's got Matt Snowball at the wheel of the Plymouth Barracuda for company. Then it's going to be 83. That will be Phil Walker and the number 18 car Steve Compton, followed by 179, which is going to be Oliver Wardle, and then Simon Roos on row number 10. When we get to row number 11, it's the Leatherbys, for which the starting driver for that particular car was Sam Leatherby, and alongside is Metam Yilmaz, followed by Jimmy Hibbard and Gary Lapidis, who stopped the car, didn't he, at Redgate Corner on the first lap, but would appear that he is there for the restart. And Simon Hardington in that Ford Mustang that was involved with all of that backmarker lap restarts at the back of this one, but in 5 minutes I'm not sure they'll catch him to lap him again this time through, so he should remain on the lead lap. Now there's no carryover of what was happening in part 1 of the race, so this is as it is. The results when the cars cross the line, subject to any penalties, will be the results of this race. It's not as though and we look at what the gaps were between the cars and then combine the results. That just doesn't happen anymore. So it is a 5-minute race now in reality, in the positions that they are in, and everybody will start on the same lap again. So even if you were a lap down, that first race, that first 15 minutes didn't exist in reality. You can forget that. We all go again, but only for 5 minutes this time through. So they just come through the Fogarty S's on this formation lap. Michael Saunders was dominant in qualifying with 1.9 seconds between himself and the next of the best. The time difference in terms of qualifying between Michael Saunders and the car that lines up alongside him was 2.0 seconds, Chris Richardson. So you would expect him to pull away a little bit, but Chris Richardson kept Michael Saunders fairly honest in the early stages of part 1 of the race before the red flags came out. Let's see what he might be able to do in part 2. The cars have had time to cool down. The drivers sadly haven't though, because they are sat there with no airflow. You think it would be nice that you're not driving round and having to soak up all of that engine heat, but the heat soak is still there, and then you're not moving, so it's even worse for these drivers now. I would say they'll be hotter than they were when they were racing. They'll want to get going again to get a little bit of airflow through if they can. So 5-minute race, rolling start, everybody getting themselves into side-by-side order. Red lights are on the gantry, And when they go off, which they will do any second now, there we go. It looks as though Michael Saunders again gets a good start, and he's just got his nose ahead, but not by much from Chris Richardson, but he's got the all-important inside line as they head up towards Redgate. So it's Michael Saunders' lead. Chris Richardson is there in second place, and Aston Blake hangs on to third position at this stage, with the car of Peter Ankers sitting there in fourth position. Simeon Chodosh is there in fifth. Rob Hollyman is there in sixth position. And seventh looks as though that's Neil Fowler in the MGB GT V8 that's there in seventh. So it's Tuscan from Chevrolet Monte Carlo, from Tuscan, from Corvette, from Camaro at this stage. And everybody is safely through the first few corners. There is, yeah, right at the back, I can see Gary Lapidis, who looks as though he's stopped in the gravel trap at Redgate corner, is going again. So maybe it was a quick Alt Control and Delete, flick some switches and get back out. But his car that I thought had retired in part one of the race is taking part in part two. So the cars will only get 3 laps out of this one before the time runs out. So it's a 3-lap sprint in reality. And the finishing results from this one should give us the grid for tomorrow's race, which I don't believe at the moment, unfortunately, we're going to be live streaming for you. So just enjoy this action today from Bernie's V8s, which always produces some great racing, always brings out some fantastic cars. So Michael Saunders leads. Chris Richardson is not pulling away a great deal from Aston Blake. There's a snatch break from the race leader there. That's just the unloaded wheel, though, as they come into and then out of Melbourne Hairpin. And Aston Blake gets a good run on Chris Richardson going up the hill. He's not going to be close enough, though, when they get towards Goddard. So Chris Richardson still hangs on to what is second position. Aston Blake there in third, who we've seen out racing Porsche 911 RSRs in the past. They've still got the car, himself and his father. His father will take over this car for tomorrow's race, I believe. Over the start-finish line go the top 4. With the top 3 having pulled away from Peter Ankers, who's there in 4th place. And in 5th place, Rob Hollyman is under attack as Simeon Chodosh jinks out from behind at the wheel of the Chevrolet Corvette, but can't get past the Camaro. This one car's making good progress, which is the 55 Tuscan. It's come from something like 30th, I think, on the original grid. Squeal of tyres and a spin at Redgate corner. Guy Carter's gone round. I heard the squeal in the background. The cameraman caught the car recovering. Will rejoin, but I'm afraid he's dropped way down through the order. He was running in 12th position, has lost 3 laps from his restarting position anyway. That's going to drop him further down through the order, I'm afraid. And with only 2.5 minutes to recover, that's going to put him in a poor finishing position for this race. And of course, that's going to mean, in reality, a poor starting position for tomorrow's race. Good fight still going on between Aaron Moyse, who's fighting away with Martin Ellis in the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus. Simeon Chodosh has still not palmed away the aspirations of the MGB GT V8 of Neil Fowler. And you've got the silver and the burgundy car just behind as well, which is going to be Bernard Foley. Let's have a quick replay of that spin. Oh, that was right across the nose of a fellow competitor there and harmlessly into the infield in the end for Guy Carter. But that would have been a bit of a spike in the heart rate because the MGB went across the front of, I think, might have been Guy Samuels. Bernard Foley in full attack mode again, trying to get past Neil Fowler. Neil Fowler's trying to get past Simeon Chodosh. You can see he'll head up towards the final corner, which is Goddard's. They're taking subtly different lines, trying to see whether they can stick the nose up the inside or whether it's going to get chopped off. But this is a great fight coming over the start-finish line. It's allowing the cars ahead to really substantively break away. Saunders leading the way, but last time through, Chris Richardson did set the fastest lap of the race. So just under a second between first and second place. The fastest lap of the race, 41.044 from Chris Richardson, which is a good lap time from him. So 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, all together down through the crane and curves. In front of the queue is Simeon Chodosh, number 666. On the back of the queue is going to be Rob Hollyman's Chevrolet Camaro. It's Bernard Foley, who currently sits in 8th position, trying to see whether he can just muster a little bit more pace to get right up onto the coattails of the number 55 TVR Tuscan that lies alongside him, just ahead of him. Neil Fowler also trying to unlock the door a little bit on Simeon Chodosh. Looks for the inside line, but I think, looking to gain a place, he now needs to be careful that he doesn't lose one, because he's got the TVR Tuscan trying to weave his way past, and he has. He's lost one place. Rob Hollyman might pick him off as well, because we know that Camaro is a rocket ship in a straight line. So down the straight they will go. Our race leaders will already be on to the Grand Prix loop and heading towards the checkered flag. So the Jägermeister Tuscan, I'm not thinking is going to get through, but the leading pair just heading up towards Goddard's corner for the final time, and it looks as though in the first of our Burney's V8s races here this weekend, Michael Saunders is going to come through and claim the win. He was dominant in qualifying by 1.9 seconds. He hasn't had quite the margin in the race, but he's through to grab the win in the Burney's V8 race. Great drive by Chris Richardson, who finished in second position. Aston Blake is home in third place, and who's going to finish in sixth position? Simeon Chodos just hanging on to sixth place at the moment. There's a snacks break from the TVR that runs a little bit wide on the exit of the corner, and I think Simeon Chodos is just about going to hang on to the position as they come through. Yes, he does. Hangs on to sixth position, but he's got the Birch and Holden TVR chasing him down, followed by Neil Fowler, Rob Holliman, Bernard Foley, all in the mix as well. So there's your top three. Michael Saunders, followed by Chris Richardson, followed by Aston Blake. Fastest lap of the race will go to the car that finished in second place overall, the recovering car, which had the spin into the infield, Guy Carter, ultimately coming through in 16th position after that spin. So he will rue that small mistake there again, which was just so difficult, trying to get the power down as soon as you can, and once the car got away from him there was nothing he could do. Thankfully he spun harmlessly to the infield though and was able to at least finish. So last couple of cars just coming through. I think maybe one more car to take the checkered flag, which will be Simon Hardington's Ford Mustang. Once he is through, then that will be 22 cars out of the original 35, so it was a bit of a race of attrition, I'm afraid, which isn't surprising in these warm conditions, because there may well be some drivers that just decide to park it because it was just too warm and they didn't want to risk the car. So through comes Simon Hardington. He's the last to take the checkered flag. And let's just confirm some results for you then for that Burney's V8 race, which say a 20-minute race, but that red flag coming out with 6 minutes and 27 seconds to go just meant that it was a 5-minute 3-lap dash in the end as it was, and Michael Saunders will be as pleased as punch with that one because he led every single lap and he was the man who did fewer laps than anybody else really in qualifying. Only did 7 laps. Michael Saunders claims the win. Chris Richardson was in second. Aston Blake was there in third. Peter Enkers was fourth, ahead of Simeon Chodos. And then it was the Birch and Holden TVR. We didn't get the starting driver for that finished in 6th place. Seventh place was Neil Fowler, followed by Rob Holliman, then Bernard Foley, and Martin Ellis completed the top 10, having started on the front row of the grid. As we move outside of the top 10, in 11th position it was Aaron Moyes, with Peter Samuels finishing in 12th place. Gary Lapidus finished in 13th in the end. Matt Snowball was 14th, Phil Walker was 15th, 16th place after the recovering following the spin for Guy Carter. Then it was the number 18 car, which is going to be Steve Compton, followed by Oliver Wardle, and then the final two inside the top 20, Simon Roos, and the Leatherby's, the number 58 car, which for that race would have been started by Sam Leatherby. Then it was Martin Yilmaz, and then the final car to take the checkered flag is Simon Hardington. So that is it from Burney's V8s. Thanks for joining us for that race at Donington Park, but don't forget we've got the historic Outlaw race coming up for you. That is live streamed and we are scheduled and timetabled to go live with that one around about 6:05 this evening. So thanks for joining us for this race. We'll see you a bit later on today for Historic Outlaws. Until then, goodbye.